Hey, how you doing? This is a Talking Dude. Thank you for watching. In this video, I want to talk about the Grenfell Tower disaster. Not so much about the disaster itself, but the aftermath and how I think that this should and will lead to a massive political upheaval in this country, a really overdue political upheaval in this country. So just let me just say, I'm not talking about the upheaval that Jeremy Corbyn and his clique, his Marxist clique, are trying to, push on us. I'm not talking about John McDonnell, trying to get 1 million people on the streets to push out a democratically elected government, and force in the Labour Party into government. I'm not talking about this Clive Lewis idiot who tweeted a picture of the burning corpse of Grenfell Tower and said, "Burn neoliberalism, not people." I'm not talking about Jeremy Corbyn, trying to seize rich people's homes to house those survivors of Grenfell Tower. I'm not talking about all of that, just to say that according to a LSE study, a recent LSE, London School of Economics study, there's almost no evidence of London homes owned by foreign buyers being left empty. But anyway, that's just besides the point. What I'm talking about is that whichever way you slice it, and Jeremy Corbyn and David Lammy and all these people have tried to make it about cuts, about austerity, about the Tories, about the Tory council, the Conservative council in the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. They've tried to make it about rich v poor, workers versus bosses and so forth to boost their, to further boost their narrative. They're on a wave, to be fair. They're on a wave right now as I'm recording this video. People are in Glastonbury singing, "Oh, Jeremy," that's that song. They are hero worshipping this dude, but it's not about that. And I think that the Corbyn wave will, that's going to come to an end once people face up to what life under Marxism would be if he was really to do all of the things that he said he's going to do, nationalisation and massively increasing welfare spending and all this. He would bankrupt the country and we would be screwed. But I think something deeper and something much more important and something much more positive than that is going to happen. I think kind of like with the expenses scandal, if you remember, cast your minds back a few years and how the legitimacy of our ruling elites was under so much scrutiny when people like David Lammy and other MPs were claiming on houses, fraudulently getting all sorts of money out of our pockets by fraudulent means, and that managed to blow over. Although I think it resurrected itself in the Brexit vote. Actually, I think that was partly as a result of that unresolved issue of these politicians screwing us over, and I think the Brexit vote was part of that. But I think the Brexit vote kind of, Brexit will just paper over the cracks a little bit, I think, as I'm going to explain in a minute. And Corbyn right now, as I say, yes, he's promising everybody free stuff, and who's going to look a gift horse in the mouth, so he might have his, if an election comes later on this year, he'll probably be elected, and then we'll have to go through the whole turmoil of that. But I think what's actually happening here is that every level of government, when you look at the Grenfell disaster, what happened was that the cause of the fire has been pinpointed, or not the cause of the fire. The thing that made the fire so devastating was to do with this cladding, apparently, this outer layer on the outside of the flat, of the block. And this layer, there were concerns raised about this years and years and years ago. So people are saying, "Oh, it's the council, it's this, that, and the other." Well, let's have a look at this article. This is an article from where are we? This is an article in the Telegraph, and it says, "Warnings over death trap high-rise building cladding ignored for decades." Really now? Well, what's this? Let's read it. It says, "Fire safety experts warned as long ago as 1999, party like it's 1999, that the cladding used in buildings such as Grenfell Tower posed a deadly threat to hundreds of residents inside. The experts from industry and the Firefighters Union predicted that such cladding could help drive any fire upwards to quickly engulf the entire building. In a chilling premonition of what would happen 18 years later at Grenfell Tower, where at least 58 people are now feared to have been killed, Fire Brigades Union official Glyn Evans told MPs, "The problem with cladding is that it will, if it is able, spread fire, and it will spread it vertically. If you get a multi-storey building, you will get fire spread up the outside if the cladding will permit it." It says, after hearing evidence from Mr. Evans and others, a House of Commons committee concluded in early 2000 that the authorities could not afford to wait before taking action to tackle the risk. Its report stated, "We do not believe that it should take a serious fire in which many people are killed before all reasonable steps are taken towards minimising the risk." I'll just scroll down a little bit here. It says, "The report appears to have been one of several alarm bells rung over the safety of high-rise buildings which went unheeded." By who? Unheeded by the governments of the time. Who was the Prime Minister in 1999 and 2000? Tony Blair with his Chancellor Gordon Brown, and with Jack Straw and Robin Cook and all these people, Harriet Harman and John Prescott, who we're going to hear about shortly. You know, there now is a growing conviction amongst construction and fire experts that the cladding system fixed to Grenfell Tower to improve the energy efficiency and appearance of the building as part of a £8.6 million refurbishment helped spread the fire. The Select Committee on Energy, Transport and Regional Affairs, the government department then presided over by Labour's John Prescott, had gathered in July 1999 to hear evidence on the use of external cladding in high-rise towers following a fire at a 14-storey block in Irvine, Ayrshire, that's in Scotland, the previous month, in which a 55-year-old disabled man was killed. That followed a fire in 1991 at Knowsley Heights in Liverpool, where flames from the bottom to the top of where flames spread from the bottom to the top of the 11-storey block, causing serious damage. Now, I could carry on, but the point here is that cladding, yes, you can blame Kensington and Chelsea, council for the fact that they spent £8.6 million refurbishing so-called this block, which included putting on that cladding just last year in 2016. But it's been nearly 20 years that this select committee reported. Why didn't Tony Blair's government do something about that? Why didn't Gordon Brown's government do something about that? Why didn't the Lib Dem and Conservative coalition government do something about that? And why didn't either David Cameron or Theresa May do anything about this all this time? Now while the Labour Party and Corbyn have really tried to make this all about capitalism and the failure of capitalism and neoliberalism and all about cuts and so forth and this, that and the other, this is obviously going to unravel very quickly. After the Grenfell Tower fire, the Prime Minister ordered all local authorities who have got tower blocks to do fire safety checks on them, and it's turned out that 27 blocks in 15 local authorities around the country have been found to have this unsafe cladding on them. Now, most of those blocks are going to be in most of those authorities are going to be Labour controlled, because the way that it works in this country, Labour is strong in areas where there's a high amount of social housing, council housing and so forth. The inner London areas like Hackney and Lambeth and Southwark and whatnot, and then areas, other urban areas like Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham and so on and so on. So most of these areas are going to be in Labour controlled, most of these blocks are going to be in Labour controlled areas. Questions are going to have to be asked about these councils as to why have they only just now found out these safety concerns. I'm going to read just now, as I'm recording this video, hundreds of people have been evacuated from a council estate in Camden, a Labour-controlled constituency and council in North London. And basically what's happened is that the council, did these checks as ordered by the government, and then it turned out that they wrote to people this week to say, yeah, we're going to do these checks. And then on Friday, the fire service came and said these blocks are unsafe. And so they made the decision on Friday evening to evacuate everybody from these buildings. This is 600 flats, so thousands of people have been evacuated. Serious questions have to be asked. Why has this only just now come to light? What was Camden Council doing before then? On screen here's some information for you that will be pertinent. This is the estate in question, Chalcott's estate in Camden in North London. And this company called Rydon received £66 million from Camden Council in 2006 to refurbish the estate. And the work was completed, I believe, in 2010. And you'll see here from the picture here, you see that that white cladding kind of there. That's the cladding that's in question here. So we have to ask ourselves, well, why weren't these fire safety checks done at the time? Or if they were done at the time, were they done poorly? I've heard that being said by spokespeople for Camden Council, saying that, oh yeah, we were, no, not that the checks were done safely, but they were told that the cladding wasn't was fireproof. Well, why did you think that? Why didn't the council have the right safeguards in place to make sure that they weren't just going on the word of what they were told by a company or whatever, but that they actually did proper checks? The follow-up question has to be asked as well, is that apparently fire safety regulations themselves are bogus, or not bogus, but they're not easy to follow. So I've got this article here. This is in the Guardian, and it's called. The title of the article was "Disaster Waiting to Happen: Fire Safety Expert Slams UK Tower Blocks," and it's by an architect called Sam Webb. And I'll scroll down to the. I'll scroll down here. It says, "A disaster waiting to happen is how the architect and fire expert Sam Webb describes hundreds of tower blocks across the UK. After the fire at Grenfell Tower in Kensington that has left at least 6 people dead, it's 58 people now, and probably more. We are still wrapping post-war high-rise buildings with highly flammable materials and leaving them without sprinkler systems installed, then being surprised when they burn down." Webb surveyed hundreds of residential tower blocks across the country in the early 1990s and presented a damning report to the Home Office which revealed that more than half of the buildings didn't meet basic fire safety standards. He said, "We discovered a widespread breach of safety, but we were simply told nothing could be done because it would make too many people homeless." Look at that. I mean, to be honest, I hadn't read this article very thoroughly. I didn't realise that this is something going back to the early 1990s, for crying out loud. So I'm gonna open that report just real quick here to see what it says. Again, now we're going back to the early 1990s. Well, that's going back to John Major, for crying out loud. Over half of council towers pose fire risk, and there's a picture of a block in that's the block in Camberwell, southeast London, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But again, central government failing to respond to the evidence being put to them. Anyway, carrying on. Quoting this guy again, "I really don't think the building industry understands how fire behaves in buildings and how dangerous it can be. The government's mania for deregulation means our current safety standards just aren't good enough." So that's another point as well, is that I'm all in favour of a small state and low taxes and individual liberty and so on and so forth. But the one purpose of the state, one of the main legitimate purposes of the state, is to keep people safe. And to have the rule of law, and to make sure that we're all following the laws when it comes to health and safety and these kind of things. And this isn't health and safety as in, you've got to make sure that you've got, I don't know, you can see a tree outside your window. This is health and safety as in, is this place going to blow up if it catches fire? Anyway, Webb advised the legal team for the families in the case of the last major tower block blaze in London in July 2009, when a fire raged through Lakanal House, a 14-storey block built in 1958 in Camberwell, southeast London. 6 people were killed, among them 2 children and a baby, when a fire caused by a faulty television in a 9th floor home gutted the building. Now here's some more pertinent information about that council. An inquest into the deaths found the fire spread unexpectedly fast, both laterally and vertically, trapping people in their homes, with the exterior cladding panels burning through in just 4.5 minutes. My God. As with Grenfell Tower, the official advice was for people to remain in their homes in the event of a blaze. The inquest concluded that years of botched renovations had removed fire-stopping material between flats and communal corridors, allowing a blaze to spread, and the problem was not picked up in safety inspections carried out by Southwark Council. The council was investigated over corporate manslaughter charges, but was only fined £570,000. Now, everywhere you look, at council level, at government level, at parliament level, at business level as well, looking at the industry, there are failings everywhere. And this is what I mean by this needs to lead to an expensive scandal type situation. But more than that, we need radical change. We need these politicians are not accountable to us. They're not looking out for our interests. No matter which party you're talking about, these parties are not looking out for our interests. What they seem to be, they're ignoring the warnings that they get, failing to act on expert advice. They've got terrible disaster response systems, poor oversight of work that's being done by on behalf of councils, poor spending decisions by councils, failing to ensure that contractors follow procedures. Even the fact of having built these bloody tower blocks in the first place, in the 60s and 70s, why the hell did they do that? It was obviously, I lived in a tower block when I was young. We lived nearly at the top of a 21-story tower block in London, and I hated it. And the thought of being in such a block when it's on fire is just absolutely terrifying. It's brought me to tears a few times just thinking about and watching the eyewitness accounts of Grenfell. It's shocking, and it is angering. It makes me angry, and it makes me even more angry when I know that the root causes of these problems are not even necessarily just to do with the housing regulations and the way that we build the houses and so forth. It's to do with wider issues of the lack of housing. Why are people being crammed into these tower blocks in the first place? Well, there's an issue to do with a housing crisis in this country. Affordable housing is at a premium. London, too much is being concentrated in London. We need to sort that out. We need to sort out people buying houses for investment purposes rather than people buying houses to live in. Now, I'm generally pro-market, but for something like land and housing, a home, I think the government does need to sort it out. Stop intervening in stupid ways like Help to Buy, which just helps to prop up housing prices and the bubble, and also stop bailing out banks when they go out of business. Just so that they can just go back to doing what they were doing before. And then the elephant in the room, of course, is immigration. The Grenfell Tower disaster. We had what's his name, Sadiq Khan, just saying, and Theresa May saying that people who come forward as a result of who were survivors of Grenfell won't face immigration checks. Why would they say that? Well, they know. One of the reasons why they've only said that 58 people have died is because a bunch of those people who died in that fire probably aren't even on the books because they're probably illegal immigrants, and b, a bunch of people would have been subletting their council flats. So people who were in there who had council flats, either they were in there and other people were living with them illegally, off the books, or else they weren't even living there. And you've got this ridiculous situation where some of these tenants who are underletting, illegally subletting their flats, are going to get a nice new plush luxury flat in another part of Kensington and Chelsea. But the main point I'm saying there is that the population pressure is a problem. I live in London. I know what the population pressure is like. It is overcrowded in London, and I'm trying to get myself out of here, and I will hopefully sooner rather than later. There's too many people coming here, but it's almost like this system that we have in this country, this facade of everything's wonderful. Look, we've got hipsters and Glastonbury, and it's wonderful. The Olympics, yay! It's just a facade. It's a facade covering up what is really happening in this country, which is that British people are struggling to have a property to live in, let alone just own a decent property to live in. Job prospects for a lot of young people are poor, and yet obviously the corporations and the politicians are fine to have basically open borders. Apparently, even under the EU, it's possible for this government to enforce immigration controls, but they just won't. They just don't. And this is the issue here, and there's a wider, big, deeper issue that I probably don't even fully understand myself. But to wrap up, we, the people of the United Kingdom, need to take control. Brexit is a good start, in my opinion, but it's just papering over the cracks. You know, all right, we leave the European Union. We've still got to deal with the immigration policy. We've still got to deal with the housing crisis. We've still got to deal with the bloated welfare state. We've still got to deal with the demographic shift in this country. We've still got, you know, all of these things still need to be dealt with. But none of the parties really want to deal with them because their vote, you know, they'll just hemorrhage votes if they turn around and try and deal with these issues. So I'll stop there. Thank you for watching. As I say, this needs to turn into a huge scandal in this country, and we, the people of this country, need to stand up and take control. Because these idiot politicians and these idiot at local level and national level, these idiots are not there for us. They're not representing us. They're just there for themselves. They're there to keep the status quo, and you know, we've got to stop relying on them. We have to get involved somehow. But anyway, thank you for watching. It's a little bit of a rant, but you know, I hope I've got my point across clearly. Take care for now. I'll see you later.